Rick Williams, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm excited to have you here today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So, you shared a very interesting napkin with me, and I'm looking forward to digging in. It says, give before asking. Why did you share that with me?
Well, you put a challenge question to me of what I I don't know, wisdom. I don't know if we even call it wisdom or insight or simple statement. And as I thought about it, in the context of a lot of writing I've been doing about leadership and leadership effectiveness, I thought of the idea of give before asking as a simple way of summing up what I think is a fundamental principle of leadership and certainly of life in general. I think how we deal with others, if we start with the idea of giving before asking, that we'll have a much more successful, impactful life. And certainly, I think you'll be a better leader if you do that.
So, what do you mean, though, by give before asking? What is that? What was the genesis of this idea for you?
Well, all of us, as I said, I do a lot of writing about how to be a more impactful leader. So my sort of starting orientation is there, but I think the principles apply more generally as well. So the idea is that we usually are mostly focused on, whether we like it or not, are mostly focused on ourselves. Well, what do we want? What do we need? Gee, I want you to do something to help me. And if you're on the other side of it, and I come to you and say, gee, I want you to promote my new book or something like that. You might say, well, okay, maybe I will, maybe I won't. But what you're really asking is, well, why should I do that? And that's the natural reaction that we all have. Because when somebody comes and says, well, gee, I want you to join my company, or I want you to buy my product, or I want you to be my friend, whatever it is, we are instinctively, whether we think about it explicitly or not, we're sort of saying, okay, I hear you saying that, but why? What's in it for me? And it's in truth is really not a selfish question. That is, that's how that's just sort of natural for human interaction. And if you understand that that's how we interact with the people and put yourself on the other side and say, okay, I want you, I want my customers to buy my new widget or my new service, my consulting service or something else instead of just saying to them, well, gee, I have a new widget and I want you to buy it, that is not the right place to start. You're better off by starting by saying, I'm going to give you something. I'm going to give you the value of my new washing machine or my new consulting service or my new friendship or whatever it is, start by giving. What is the value that you are offering to somebody? Give them an offering of value. And then once they feel there's value in what you are offering, giving, then there's a basis for conversation about what you're asking of them. You may be asking of them to buy something. I think this goes way beyond that sort of simple notion of a transaction, but that's the basic idea. The basic idea is start by giving, don't start by asking.
Yeah, and I think inherent with the way that you approached that, Rick, was you know, it's not giving something that's willy-nilly, right? You're not giving away willy-nilly. You're giving something of value. You've said this a few times. So, in order to give something of value, you have to approach that conversation with curiosity, right? Like, what does the other
Yes,
person value? Isn't that a center? Isn't that sort of like the central part of this? That
absolutely.
sort of hidden. The prize inside is a little bit of, hey, we need to know what the other person might be interested in.
Absolutely. So you are, I mean, just think of any. any interaction which you're first meeting somebody, if the first thing you're saying when you meet somebody is, I'm Rick Williams, I think I'm an important person, I have a new book that you should buy, that person is completely turned off instantly by your talking about yourself and who you are and what you need and blah, blah, blah. If you meet a new person, if I need a new person, the first thing I should be doing is this finding about who they are. Ask what their name is. Ask why, why did they come to this event? What do they do? Learn something about them and find a way of making a connection with them before talking about yourself and what you want for yourself. That is a form of giving. You're giving acknowledgement that that person is somebody that you're really paying attention to in this moment. You're giving an acknowledgement that that person is worth your time. You're giving an acknowledgement that you're interested in who they are. That is that is a form of giving, which in truth doesn't cost you anything, but it is extremely valuable to the other person. And that giving posture is the way to start any new relationship, conversation, whether it's, with somebody you'd like to, meet and go out on a date with, or somebody you are meeting who you hope will be a new customer, or somebody who you hope will be a new employee. It's the same principle in every single new relationship.
One of the things that I think is really powerful is when you said it is there's almost like a hidden word in this napkin, right? Like give attention before asking for attention. And that's where it starts. And isn't there, you know, in, inherent with that, I think, is leaders need to be confident and curious, right? Don't you isn't that where it starts? The energy of giving attention comes from the fact that you're secure with who you are. So I can give somebody attention. You don't need to fill the air with yourself. You don't have to fill the room with yourself because you don't need that. You could give attention.
Right. Exactly right. Now that's a very, very good point. What you're saying is don't make it just about yourself. Give of yourself to the others that they are important, that they're important to you.
Mhm.
If I'm meeting somebody, I want that person to feel that they're important to me, at least in this moment in time, that who they are and they're worth my time.
Yeah.
And that is the way that we then take down all these barriers to connecting with each other.
And there's no hook to that, right? I mean, there's no, you can't fake that, can you? You have to actually be interested. You have to actually give them attention. You actually
Absolutely.
have to pay attention because people know when you're not, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. No, and I don't mean this in disingenuous way. I think this is serious. I mean, one of the things about, if I may kind of broaden this to the principles of leadership, is that you know, leadership depends on trust, and trust is built on people feeling that they can be open with each other and understand who each other are. I may have the grammar wrong on that, but whatever. I leadership is built on trust, and trust starts by giving. If I don't trust you enough to give you something of myself, then don't expect people to trust you. I cannot expect you to trust me unless I'm willing to be open and vulnerable enough to trust you. That's
Mm.
the fundamental starting point of leadership. So when um, I say I want my leadership team to follow me in a new direction, or a change direction for where we as a nonprofit, or the football team, or the company are going. uh, I have to build trust with the team members. And the way I build trust with the team members is to say to them, okay, I trust, I want to know who you are and how you're going to contribute to this. I trust you enough to tell you what I'm really thinking here. I trust you enough to want to understand your views about what we're trying to do. And I am going to share with you my vision of success that I'm hoping we can all share together. That sharing of a vision of success is part of the process of building trust. And that giving of a vision of success, where we're going to go if we all work together, is part of the giving process. So that's why giving is a unifying idea for all of this. You can't just say, I'm the boss, follow me, and expect that people are going. I mean, yeah, I mean, some people are going to, all right, yeah, he is the boss. Okay, we'll go along. But if you want real people to really be engaged with making the enterprise successful, just saying you're the boss and do what I tell you to do is not the way to make it happen.
Yeah. One of the things that so the first time I said, hey, there's this silent word, give attention before asking for it. But then the next iteration, the next example was trust. And you're really talking about giving trust before asking for trust, uh, giving
Right,
vision before asking for buy-in. It's. I think that this is, the blank slide or the blank line, insert word here was intentionally left out of the napkin because it really relates to everything. If you want trust, you must give it before asking for it. If you want
right,
attention, you must give it before asking for it. If you want people to participate in your vision before asking them to join you on the journey, you have to give it to them
right,
and trust that to them, right? Um,
right.
so is was that what you meant by constructing this wisdom? Is this what you're really talking about? Is in every action, give what it is that you're looking for before you can ask for it.
Yes, that's why when we had our conversation about this napkin, um, it happened at a moment when I was doing a lot of thinking about what are the core principles of leadership. And as I thought about it, um, I mean, I hadn't really said it this way before, but that's why I'm giving you a compliment that you got me to write this down in three simple words. Uh, a principle that I think is fundamental to successful leadership.
Mhm.
Um, it's also fundamental to, I think, to every relationship that one has in life, but certainly it's fundamental to leadership because, you know, I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but often the boss or the leader thinks that all they have to do is just tell people what to do. And um, yeah, I mean, in limited circumstances, and you get small, a small company or office or somebody like that where it's all right, we're all getting a paycheck and, we'll do whatever the boss wants and blah, blah, blah. Okay. I mean, you can kind of go along that way, but it's not the way you want to operate if you want to be really successful in anything. And so what you did is get me to crystallize this idea in the three simple words. And it is an idea that I think is fundamental to any successful, um, to a leader's being successful of any organization of any consequence.
Yeah, and I really think I think it's really scalably applicable to a lot of different environments. If especially, so really a lot of things, there are several pre-steps to this before a leader can engage in this way. I think the leader has to be aware of their mindset. Where are they? What are they there to do? And if you're there for trust building, well, then you have to give the trust before asking for it. If you're there for attention so that people can be focused, you have to give them your focus before you get it. And there's a core philosophy I have around leadership that is that you need to connect with people before you can challenge them. You need to connect with them before you can move forward. By giving, don't you open the door for connection, right? Like genuine human connection
Absolutely.
comes by giving, that generosity of our hearts and heads.
Right. Absolutely. I again, we're not here to talk about my new book, but I'm going to draw something from Create the Future in that what I'm advising leaders to do when they're faced with making an important decision is to step back and not just, oh, here's a decision I have to make about whether how we're going to introduce this product or buy this company or sell out or whatever the heck we're going to do. I say step back, take time to make sure you're really doing this right. And what I'm advising people to do is to draw in a small group of key advisors to help you make the decision. It's not that they're going to vote on what you should do, but present them with what the challenges that you or the company is facing and get their inputs on it, their different perspectives, and core to that, and get their thoughts on what you should be doing or can be doing. What are the real options you have? And the core to that is making it clear that you are open to hearing their points of view. So often, the boss, and I'm just using it as a cliche term here, will, pull a group of, senior leaders or team members or whatever it is together and say, here's what we're going to do. And, you know, blah, 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 just go off and do it. I'm saying, okay, that is appropriate sometimes when some decision has already been made. But if you're faced with a really challenging decision, bring those same people together and say, I have some thoughts about this, but here's what we're really dealing with. And I want to get your views on this. Share your experiences of being in similar situations. And I'm going to and find ways to take down the barriers to people being open and talking about what their real thoughts are, their experiences, even saying that, the leader's understanding of what's going on may be completely wrong. And this has to do with building trust in that kind of an environment.
Mhm.
To say, I am giving you, I am giving you permission in the language we're talking about. I'm giving you permission to share your thinking on this, even the thinking that I might be wrong. I am encouraging you to be creative, to take
Mm.
down the barriers. I want to hear crazy ideas, even ideas that are completely silly at first blush, because those ideas may get all of us thinking about other ideas that really aren't crazy that we never would have thought about before. So what you have to do as the leader is to give of yourself, saying, I I might be wrong. In the end, I will make the decisions I have to make, but I want you to feel open to talking about sharing your own real experiences, your own thinking. Put crazy ideas on the table. Tell us what your tell us the times that have you dealt with an issue like this before that's relevant to this that I've never even heard of before. Anyway, so that whole process for how to make important decisions rests on building trust, and trust comes from being willing to give something of yourself. I talk about it in terms of being leaders. Leaders must be both decisive and vulnerable. Vulnerable means that you're willing to say, I might be wrong.
Mhm.
Vulnerability means that you're willing to say, I might not really understand all the issues here or um, understand the dynamics of why our marketplace is changing in ways that we hadn't anticipated. That's what vulnerability is. And vulnerability is another way of building, is a way, an important way of building trust in that you're giving yourself to the other people to see you as a human being who might be wrong and is open to hearing other points of view. Those are the core requirements for making difficult decisions, and I think that giving is a core part of that. I know I've
Yeah,
talked
I think
long
another
about
way, no, I think another way of saying that, using your napkin as a lever, is give an open mind before asking for an open mind. Give an open heart before you ask for an open heart. And and I think that that's really what you're saying when you're saying when you're talking about being open to being wrong and open to learning, open to adjustment, open to all of those kinds of things. You have to demonstrate that in action. I used to always um, I don't believe you can hold anybody accountable. I think you can treat people as accountable. So show up, almost like give yourself up as accountable before asking other people to do the same. Saying, "Hey, I was wrong on this call last time. I really want to make sure that we get everybody's perspective on this. Here's what we want to achieve." Then you give people your ear, so that you can get theirs in return. And I think this is a really interesting way of thinking about a really simple sort of gut check that leaders can use prior to essentially any team encounter. Because isn't the most powerful question is, like something along the lines of how do we solve this together? Or how do we solve this problem? What do we need to do about this? And then waiting for the answer. But the answer never comes if you don't open the door for it properly.
right. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And you're sort of leading on to another principle here. I was thinking about Jack Welch, who is a former CEO of General Electric, and he used to say that being the smartest person in the room was not his job as a CEO. His job as a CEO was to ask questions
Mhm.
and discover what the heck was really going on. And um, you know, we often feel as the boss that, we're supposed to know what's going on. We're supposed to have all the answers. We're supposed to know what the right thing to do at every moment is. And in truth, you don't, but it's really difficult for a lot of people, a lot of us, I'm not making any distinction with myself, a lot of us who have responsibility for organizations to say, hey, wait a second, I'm not really sure exactly what's going on. Uh, and help me understand, help me be a better leader of our organization by helping me understand really what the options I have are. What are the decisions I actually have to make? What are the options I have? What are the implications if we go this way or that way? Are there better ideas here that I haven't even thought of or heard of? That, you know, coming to peace with yourself as somebody who really doesn't know everything is an important maturing process for a leader. And because the best leaders are not the ones who know everything. The best leaders are the ones who help themselves and their team discover what are what's the best way to go, reflecting the organization's goals, the risk preferences, and the organization's values. So being willing to say, let's go through this so you're going to help me make decisions if I'm the decision maker, but let's go through this together and discover what is the best way to go for this nonprofit or organization or soccer team or whatever the heck it is, and make decisions that are going to come as close as we can to achieve our goals, our risk preferences, and our values.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting when you're thinking about, I keep on going back to your napkin and thinking about ways to incorporate
Sure.
what you're sharing with it. And it's really even you can't ask people to be interested and engaged problem solvers, applying curiosity to the situation, if you're not showing genuine interest in them, right? If
Right.
you're not genuinely curious, if like, and we've all been in those teams where the somebody says they're in a position of authority, they're in a position of leadership, and they say, yeah, yeah, I want to hear from you, but you know they don't really want to hear from you. They're going to do whatever it is that they've decided already, and and
Right.
you know they're just going through, they're checking off a list of questions that they need to ask because they got some kind of a guidebook and they say, oh, this is what leaders do, so I'm going to do that, but they don't care. So
Right.
but what you're talking about is something different than that, and you're talking about how your team has the ability to help you get things right, but you have to give them that opportunity. You have to actually be interested in it. You have to act like you're interested in it. And the best way to act like you're interested is actually being interested, being curious.
Right. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I think about so I do a lot of board of director work, serving on the board, or writing about boards of directors, which is sort of a little bit of an esoteric specialty area in this. But what you see so often is that leaders will say, "Oh, I put my board of directors together," and I say, "Okay, well, who's actually on your board?" Well, it's their golf buddy, it's their accountant, it's their lawyer, it's
Mm.
it's absolutely people who are not going to give them, uh, good independent advice. And in fact, what you want to do in putting any, whether it's your board of directors or your senior leadership, you don't want people who just think like you do. If it's just more people like you might as well, just make every decision on your own, and you're going to make a lot of bum decisions because you're not hearing different points of view. The better way to do this is to get people involved who have experiences that are different than yours. And I don't mean somebody who's a jerk about it. I mean somebody who actually is a real contributor that may have experiences in related markets, or their perspective is R&D or something like that, or marketing, or HR, or the financial realities of the world, or whatever it is, but different than yours, whatever yours are. I might be somebody who's a great outside person, like dealing with customers, and I want everybody to like me and blah blah blah. Okay, well, don't get other people who are just like me. I mean, I shouldn't get other people who are just like me as the people I talk to. I want to talk to people who are not like me,
Mhm.
and um, and then give them permission to to share their thinking. Now, that doesn't mean that in the end I'm taking a vote and it's a popularity contest. It's not. But I will make better decisions if I'm surrounding people with different views than I have and different life experiences than I have. And I am very clear to them that I want to hear what they're really thinking. I'm not just I'm not just sort of saying, oh, I go through the process just as you said. So, for instance, often it's you want to have you want to have somebody involved who's that contrarian thinker that's thinking about completely contrary to the way everybody else is thinking, just so you're understanding that point of view. You do want to have somebody who's a sort of reality person. Well, um, you know, in order for this really to work, these three things would have to happen, and if they don't happen, it's not going to work. You want to hear the reality person. You want to hear the person who says, this is the way our investors or our financial partners, the banks, are going to look at this, and you want to hear that point of view as well. So getting all these points of view is part of the process, and it's essential that you find ways of communicating to each of them that their point of view, that they are important to this process, and that their point of view is an important contribution to this process. And anyway, so yeah, I mean, you have to, in the language you're using of giving, making yourself vulnerable, vulnerable by saying, I don't really understand. I'm admitting that I don't understand everything that's going on, and your contribution is an important part of getting this right for all of us.
You know, this is really interesting. I mean, we're in a hypercharged, polarized time, generally
Right,
speaking, right? Universally around the world. This is what's happening, and what I think is you're saying is somewhat uncomfortable to people because we have this sort of sameness algorithm that we tend to govern our lives by. I mean, a lot of people are sort of very insular, surrounding themselves by people who think like they do, walk like they do, talk like they do. And you're really talking about challenging yourself to be around people who think differently, who have different experiences. And truly, in leadership, there's nothing more valuable than a mosaic of different impressions, different ideas, different life experiences coming together to solve a challenge. Because when you have that, that diversity allows you to really uncover genius in many cases. But it can
right.
be challenging for leaders to lead in that. It's hard to lead in those situations because those
Absolutely.
differences can be challenging. And I think giving before asking also opens the door to a productive conversation in that. Even saying, "Hey, I, I'm struggling with some of what you're saying or where you're saying it from, but I want to understand the value, right?" So you can give the respect for the other person before asking for it in return. And don't you open the door for it when you do that? And you also open the door for genius collaboration when you do that too.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. You know, creativity is it's not a straight line process, right? Uh,
Right.
creativity requires, breaking down barriers. Now, it doesn't mean that every idea is a great idea, um, but uh, the way you get really great ideas is not by saying getting a group of people together and say, okay, we are at the whiteboard here. We're going to do a creative process. Give me your great idea. What's the next great idea we're going to have for this company? That is not the way to do it. The
Mhm.
way to do it is to say, okay, um, give us some ideas if we're just going to sort of continue doing what we're doing right now. So let's get some of those, we're just more or less continue what we're doing. What are some ideas that if we sort of okay, we want to push things ahead, but we know we can be we'll know if we really do it, we'll be successful at it. Okay, let's get a bunch of ideas on that in that I don't know, box or whatever it is. What are some ideas that would be really stretch ideas? We might be able to do it, but we might not be able to do it. Let's get some ideas that are really stretch goals. And then let's get some really silly ideas that, are moonshot ideas that we probably couldn't do it, but if we did, we'd really transform how we're doing what we're doing with this company. I'm talking about a company here, but it's the same principle. And I I don't want to hear just the great ideas. I want to hear every idea. And what'll happen is that somebody's going to come up with an idea that's, on the surface of it could never work. Uh, but it's going to get somebody else to say, now that you're saying that, I hadn't thought about this, but what about this other idea? And what if we connected these two things or three things together? That could we make that work? That is how you do creativity. So, and then what you'll do is you'll discover from everything that you've now posted on the whiteboard or blackboard or whatever you're doing, you'll discover those three or four ideas out of all of that that then come closer to matching what your underlying goals are and your risk preferences. Risk, we haven't really talked about risk, but is failure going to be acceptable or not? Um, does this absolutely have to work? I mean, if you're inventing a new, creating a new medicine for children, it absolutely, and it goes to the market, it absolutely has to work. But if you're doing something else where, failure could be an option, because what you get out of it, you may learn enough that just the process of having tried to make it work is worth the effort, because then you'll learn a lot about the technology or what the market really wants or what your real capabilities are. All of that sort of stuff could come out of a project that isn't in the end itself successful, but then you learn enough to make the next effort successful. I'm kind of talking too much here, but
No, no, no.
that,
I think that
that's
makes
how
a lot
you
of sense.
think about
And but
creativity.
yeah, I know. But I think what you're talking about is really valuable. Um, Rick, I mean, I think we could keep on talking for a while on your napkin and the associated ideas, and I want to thank you for that. I also, this season, we've been paying forward some gratitude that we received, a message that we received many years ago from John Rulin, who was a great friend of the show. He suddenly passed away, and he gave us a napkin that said, "What you appreciate appreciates." So we're asking our guests in this season to shout out someone that they'd like to give some gratitude or appreciation to. Who would you like to shout out?
You know, I've thought about that a little bit, and obviously I could say my mom and dad for whatever, but somebody that comes to my mind who's in exactly the circumstances of your friend, is a guy named Mike Porter, and Mike was a professor of mine at Harvard Business School, and he is one of the was one of the most. Mike is the person who's thought about business strategy and how companies compete with each other. And it's sort of the principal author of the literature on how companies compete and succeed in different industries. And Mike, I can't say that he was a close friend, but he was certainly an important mentor of mine. I did a lot of work parallel to what he was doing when I was at Arthur D. Little. And Mike is, unfortunately, he's one of the most energetic, dynamic people you've ever met in your life. I remember him coming into class with a diet Coke in his hand. That he was not a guy out drinking margaritas. He was a guy who was physically fit and energetic at all times. And Mike, unfortunately, has become quite ill in the last year. And I know at some point, and he's sort of passed from our world as a major professional contributor. And I guess I'm going to do a shout out to Mike Porter, who's been one of my friends and colleagues from Harvard Business School.
It's amazing. For those of you who don't know, Mike Porter is a famous researcher and professor at Harvard Business School, writing volumes of books
Right.
on competition and how competitive forces are formed and how to get an advantage. So, if you're not familiar with Michael Porter's work, there's a lot out there to get familiar with. Rick, thank you for joining me.
All right, well, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this, and I want to thank you for asking the question, because you asked the question was extremely valuable to me.
Wonderful.